The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of bad. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throb in my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too evil and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
Earnestly podcast coming to you, recording this at about 3 o'clock on a Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. We're recording this for the Friday show of the podcast. How are you guys doing? Again, another great week of content. If you guys saw, we just dropped the first NBA show. We dropped yesterday on the feed. We reacted to the first 48 hours of the NBA season. Of course, we have all the NFL content here. We had to return the Stinging Report, the first Stinging Report we've had since the NFL season started. Me and Kyle went into it again, and we're hoping that that's going to be a weekly thing moving forward, as his schedule is now, for what he's told me, his schedule is clearing up. So we're going to see more of content on that end moving forward. Look, I don't know how I do this shit, bro. Okay. I am not famous. I'm just someone who loves this medium. I like to put out good content. I got folks who love coming on the show on a weekly basis to talk about sports, talk about whatever it may be. I have friends of mine and people in the media who love to come on the show and wax poetic and banter and whatnot. Look, it is what it is. I enjoy doing this. It's a labor of love. You make a little bit of money on it. Is it enough to quit? Is it a way to quit my day job? And this is not yet, but we're working towards that. But I also enjoy the process. So this is why I do what I do, man. I mean, this is my therapy, as I said for many years. This is my therapy. So, but we have a lot to talk about on the show today. First things first, the return of the NBA. Of course, we touched a lot of topics on the NBA on the NBA show yesterday. Inside the NBA it returned on ESPN. I have some opinions about that one. I got some World Series predictions here because there's game one. I believe it's on Friday night. Stephen A. Smith once again causing a stir with some recent comments, and of course, my thoughts on the very intriguing New York City Mayor's race right now between Mamdani and Cuomo and Sliwa. It is down a race to the finish. Very, 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 very interesting race in the city that, while I do not live in, I have a lot of roots there. I'm born in New York, and obviously New York City is the biggest city, the most popular city on the planet. So, put it this way: the New York mayor is more popular than the New York governor. Okay, let's put it that way. I would say New York mayor is even more popular than the New York senator. So, New York City mayor. So that's how big a deal it is. So this may have some possible effect on future elections in the next couple of years, between the midterms next year, of course, and the presidential election in 2028. But I want to start here first because, as you guys know, I love talking about streaming and all that stuff, particularly related to streaming, because I am someone that is a pretty big streamer. When I'm talking about streaming, in terms of like content, not because me put on content, but more so like apps and Amazon, Netflix, all that stuff. So you guys know the NBA's back. Every year when the NBA comes back, I always immediately get NBA League Pass, and I always get immediately FanDuel Sports, which covers the Miami Heat here locally in South Florida. However, I am at a point right now mentally where I am kind of tired of paying for streaming left and right. I actually recently, I think I might have done this podcast too also, add up all the bills of what I pay for streaming alone, between YouTube, between Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, you name it. And that total, these are the things I pay for. It's not including the stuff I share with my mother, okay? those things add up to around $200, give or take. I mean, it could be a little bit less, could be a little more. How you slice it, okay? And then I realize now that for me to tap in the NBA season now moving forward, that League Pass now raised the prices again. Now it went from $14.99 to $16.99, so it went $2 up, okay? And then FanDuel Sports also monthly as well for the Heat is still $20 a month. So for me to tap into both these things, because I love the Miami Heat, it's my favorite sports franchise to watch. I do watch all the games, so I do get my money's worth in there. In addition to League Pass, I am now adding an additional $40 a month to my budget. Now, you guys know I cannot stand wasting money. It's not to say League Pass and FanDuel Sports is wasting money. I don't think I'm wasting money there necessarily, because it's only wasting money if you're not using the services. But I am so burnt out on continuously always paying for a new service now. I am over it. And look, I still defend that streaming is better than cable. I still defend that, but not because of the monetary part, but more so because of the fact that you have more control over the things you want to watch. If you want to cancel HBO for 3 months, you can do so in a whim. You know, with cable, most of the time with cable, you have contracts. So right now, I made a decision to put my foot down for now on adding League Pass and FanDuel Sports to my docket. Now, I do believe at some point I'm going to make a decision whether not to do that. Part of the reason I want to do this also too, on top of that, in addition to save money, is also I want to navigate and see if I can do without it for the first few weeks, because the NBA now, with their new deal, they are everywhere. They are now on Amazon, they are now on Peacock, they're on ESPN, and you do get a game or two almost every night. I'm not saying every night, almost every night, okay? Now, I love League Pass mainly because of the fact I can watch any game. I'm the fan that I will watch Kings and Clippers. I'm that guy, okay? But I also acknowledge that in recent years, first off, for starters, I've been saying for the last couple of weeks on the show, I have not been looking forward to the season anyway. So, although I am now tapped in a little bit more since the start of the year and doing all the shows I've done the last couple of weeks in getting my interest back into it. So, there was no really pressure for me to just add this stuff immediately now. So what I want to do is I want to see if I can navigate not having it for the first 3 weeks. Okay. I want to see if I can navigate all that. Let's see if I can be okay with just watching the highlights after the fact, because you can still watch the highlights on YouTube. And by the way, even the condensed version you get to watch, if you miss a game, you watch on the League Pass, that comes with the package. It's the same condensed version you can watch on YouTube. Well, I already pay for YouTube already, so why do I need to do that? Okay, why do I need to pay for something I don't need to watch? Now, the odds are, if I were to decide between the two to keep, I would probably get FanDuel Sports, because the Heat games are more important to me, because that's what I watch no matter what. I'm a Heat fan, okay? But I'm not motivated to do it right at this point right now. So let's see how I navigate that. You got Peacock now involved now. You have, as I said, ESPN is still doing their thing now. Amazon's now a new one. So and there's almost a game almost every night. Again, and also right now, for the record, I love the NBA no matter what, every day. But let's be real too. As I get older, with more other priorities, being a father and a husband and other things I'm into, football right now is takes up all the oxygen in the room right now. As you can tell on the podcast, this is why I said the NBA show, for example, we do with Greg every week, which we'll do every week at some point down the road. For me to, we're not prioritizing doing that every week until football winds down, which won't be till January. Okay, we'll do the show every few weeks. So, with that being said, I'm trying to avoid tapping in full head first. And look, I love sports still. I still love sports, but I also, with the little bit of time I have in my day, I don't want to be spending every night watching sports either. There are a lot of nights, and I knew this last year too, also, while paying for League Pass. There were a lot of nights last year where I'd rather just read a book. I'd rather just read a book, catch on my Audible, read a book, listen to a podcast here and there, make plans with friends and family, things of that nature. So there was a lot of things I did. It's like, you know what? Let's have a true evaluation where I stand with all of this right now. Okay. So for the time being, I'm not going to add it. I'm going to wait and see how my life navigates through that. Plus, the ESPN thing too, I've been talking about the last couple of weeks. WWE will be on ESPN now. To get access to their PLEs now, I now have to spend an extra $30 a month. So if I add the NBA stuff between League Pass and FanDuel Sports, plus ESPN and their tier service, now we're looking at about $70 extra a month I got to pay for, okay? Cost is going across the board. At some point, you're pricing me out, okay? So now, having said that, what I'm discovering too is I had a bundle with ESPN with Disney for a while, where I had ESPN, Hulu, and Disney Plus. And then my wife recently, she decided to change it up, the bundle where it was Hulu, Disney Plus, and HBO Max. Took out ESPN out of that bundle. We actually ended up saving money by doing that now. But apparently people are telling me now, if you add ESPN into that bundle, you get the access again. The thing is, though, I don't want to sacrifice HBO Max either. So I'm wondering if I did that, but then I added HBO Max on the back end as a separate service, do I still save money? That's the question. So my wife and I are going to discuss that tonight. I think we'll figure it out from there. Because I don't mind, because I do want to watch PLEs, but I'm not, I am right now, when it comes to streaming, I'm putting my foot down on just getting things and getting things. Do I have the money to do it? Yeah, I do. Don't want to spend it? Fuck no, I don't want to spend it. I am, not that I'm cheap, but I'm also very careful because I also want to put that money into other things too, also, and experiences and traveling, going to concerts, and this and that. And my kids also like things too, also. I got to take my kids also too, so look up for them as well too. So this is going to be a fluid conversation about streaming. For years on this podcast, we discussed streaming and how much it's important to me, into my lifestyle. We'll see where that goes. But for now, I am putting my foot down on no League Pass, no FanDuel Sports, and I continue my ESPN ban for the time being until I see fit to do so. Speaking of the NBA, the inside of the NBA has returned. Now, you guys know I was very skeptical. Happy they're still together, but very skeptical about whether or not it will still be the same product content they'll be putting out. Because obviously, the inside NBA guys, Ernie Johnson, Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, Shaquille O'Neal, TNT allowed them a lot of leash to say things and do things to where it was much more. Not that was offensive. They were never offensive, but they were very, very vocal, and they're just very loose with their content. And I love it. It's a very authentic show. No one does a show like them because it's real to who they are as people. They're not buttoned up, which I love. And that's been the success of Inside the NBA. Now, obviously, NBA on TNT no longer exists. It is now on ESPN. Inside NBA is on ESPN as a distribution deal. So my first thoughts months ago, and I said this on the show months ago, that I was very worried that by them going ESPN, and we know how Disney operates, that they may modify the content and how they do the content. Well, so far so good. I watched last night's show for the first episode, and nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed there is the label, like ESPN, NBA, and ESPN. That is it. They have the exact same set, which by the way they're still doing in Atlanta. They even kept the same theme music, dude, which in my opinion is my personal favorite theme music in all of sports. Even better, in my opinion, than Round Ball Rock on NBA and NBC, whatever, Peacock, what do you call that? Okay. They have, so far, the first show is fantastic. Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. Charles Barkley still leading into chokes. Everything is pretty much what it was back when on TNT. I am very happy they've kept it close to it. Like, if you watched the show last night and you ignored the ESPN label in the backdrop, you would have thought it was still NBA on TNT because of the theme music and because of the same content. And it's probably the same staff there too, also running the show. So I'm hoping this is what is to come. But so far, so good, man. I am so happy. As someone who loves media, and I've been a fan of this thing since NBA on TNT. NBA on TNT has been the best coverage of all in NBA history. Okay, you're talking about 35, 36 years. Was it 35 years? Whatever it was, 35 years of consistency. Like, I got in the NBA in 1989. NBA and NBC started in 1991. Okay, and they stopped in 2002. Now they come back now. I got into NBA in '89. CBS, NBA and CBS was a thing, but it ended 2 years later. So at this point, the only constant I've had in my entire NBA fandom has been NBA and TNT. I remember a world where NBA and TNT was hosted just by Ernie Johnson, and he was phenomenal for the record doing that as well. Okay, then he had Charles Barkley when he retired. Okay, and then he had Kenny Smith when he retired, and then when he added Shaq in 2012, 13, and I wasn't against it at first, but he fits in well. So the evolution of that show and that station has been the one constant I've had when it comes to media my entire NBA life. That's why I was so, even when I said on the show a couple days ago, I was still very, Peacock is back, and you're like, okay, I'm so used to NBA and TNT being the first games to air every year, and I forgot that Peacock had the first games first, the opening night on Tuesday, which is fine. They did a good job, but not having TNT was just so weird for me. So, but look, if what we saw last night is time things come, is if ESPN and if they're hands off on this will work. This will work, and I'll be okay with it. That's all I care about at this point. All right. Speaking of ESPN, Stephen A. Smith making even more news. He seems to be a constant in the show when it comes to quotes and things he says and attitude and all this stuff. Stephen A. Smith was on the Carmelo Anthony 7 p.m. in Brooklyn podcast on the season 3 premiere of the show. He generated a lot of headlines, mainly for his comments about LeBron James and some LeBron James stuff on the Mavericks and even on Kyrie Irving. Now, on his feud with LeBron James, he was very blunt about his feelings and accused James of trying to harm his career behind the scenes. Here's some quotes here, for example, from that interview. I do not like his ass, not a little bit. Another quote about LeBron James. You do not understand the lengths this man will go to. This dates back to more than a decade. I believe he is one way publicly and he's another way privately. The things that he's tried to do, if it were up to him, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's some low shit. There is no level of disrespect that has ever been accorded to me in my life more so than what he did to try to paint me as somebody who would attack someone's family. Reference, of course, to his comments about Ronnie James. He also showed specific offense at James' decision to appear on a different show on his own network. You're going to turn around and come on ESPN, Pat McAfee, white boy who comes on after First Take on the channel that I worked on and started on. Now, that last part is a little more petty. Here's the thing with Stephen A. You understand that last part real quick. If Bron don't want to fuck with you, he ain't gonna fuck with you. It's just that simple. Let it lie. Okay? That last part, you come up petty. Yeah, you are the big dog in ESPN. We got that. You're getting paid what now? What's the last contract? $25 million annually? Something like that. But Bron don't want to fuck with you. It is what it is. So part of me feels like you're mad now because homeboy now, LeBron James, don't want to mess with you now, and is vocal about that, and you feel some kind of way. Well, look, you said certain comments. He took it one way, whatever it is, and that's it. Now, did Bron try to do things behind your back in private? I can't speak on that. Would it surprise me? No. LeBron is a bit petty to himself. Okay, I will say that. Okay, so anyway, Stephen A. LeBron feud is silly at this point now. All right, on the Dallas Mavericks, he dropped a very bold prediction on the Mavericks for the upcoming season. He says that if the Mavericks are healthy, they will win the chip. He backed the prediction saying that if Kyrie Irving comes back healthy, and AD, I think Davis is healthy, of course, he thinks Dallas should be the favorite to win it all. He called the Mavericks kryptonite for the reigning champion Oklahoma City Thunder. Here's the problem with all that, bro. If you think Anthony Davis is going to stay healthy this year, look, he's not quite Joel Embiid bad, but at this point, at age, 31, 32, I'm not expecting him to be healthy. My thing is, can he be healthy in time in April to compete for when it counts? And will this team be in position to compete when it counts? Because they're already out Kyrie until at the earliest, probably in February, March. Okay, so can this team in a very deep West, can the Dallas Mavericks hang on and hang around the play-in in a play-in situation or close to the playoffs? Can they hang on the top 8? Can they? That's the question, and I have some doubts because in the time that you won't have Kyrie, can AD stay healthy in that period that you don't have Kyrie in the meantime? Okay, now you have Cooper Flag, who's rough debut yesterday, on Wednesday rather. Rough debut, but on paper, do have a good record. On paper, do the Mavericks have a good team? Yes, they do. Do I think they'll go to finals? No, I don't think so. Like, I don't trust the situation to play out. So the big one here, the big takeaway from Stephen A's interview with Carmelo, though, was about Kyrie Irving. He addressed his long history of criticism towards Kyrie Irving, clarifying that it came from a place of appreciation for his talent. Kyrie is a good brother. Quote, Kyrie's a good brother. We used to butt heads because he missed work too damn much. Now, obviously, in hindsight, the brother was right because we see all the conspiracy theories that have come out, and props to him for having the foresight to see that. We didn't see that at the time. For the record, I even apologize to Kyrie Irving for how he handled that. My only issue was him missing work, missing time. And again, I'm someone, when it came to the COVID and it came to the pandemic, I was someone that was pro-vaccine, anti-mandate. I still stand by that. Anytime you're mandating something, president of the government, I'm out. if you think I trust the government, Republican, Democrat, you're out of your damn mind. You're out of your fucking mind. Okay? So in that aspect, good to see Stephen A own up to that, his mistakes there with Kyrie Irving. Okay? Because Kyrie Irving right now, in hindsight, looks correct about that. Again, Stephen A always making news. All right, the World Series starts, I think, tonight, rather. Blue Jays and Dodgers. The World Series that we probably thought, at least half of the teams here, we thought we will see. The Dodgers, of course, being here, not surprised. They're the defending World Series champions. The Blue Jays, of course, a little bit of a surprise. But then in a wide open American League, you shouldn't be surprised because the Yankees never really put all together the entire season. You had a great story in Seattle, of course, with Kyle Rowley and the 64 home runs he had this year. There's a lot of really cool stories, but ultimately the Blue Jays made it here in a spot. It's just simple for me, man. It's just simple. I think the Blue Jays were the better matchup against the Dodgers, the better chance to beat the Dodgers because of their roster is probably a little filled out than Seattle's. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. I told you guys a couple weeks ago, we already saw the World Series. The World Series was in the NLDS between the Dodgers and the Phillies. Okay, Dodgers won that series. Dodgers in 5 here. I just don't see. I just don't see the Blue Jays, and I'll be rooting for the Blue Jays for the record. I just don't see the Blue Jays being able to withstand all that. Shohei Ohtani is a great pitcher. He's the number 4 starter. Okay, we saw what we did last week. 10 strikeouts, 3 home runs. Okay, he's their 4th starter. They're healthy now. They have the best bats in baseball. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. They got too much weapons. Again, I am rooting for the Blue Jays. I am. I just don't see it happening. Dodgers in 5 for me. All right. One last thing before I get out of here. As I've been saying, I am very, very intrigued by the New York mayor's race. The election will take place on November 4th, which is actually about a week and a half from now. Of course, the 3 candidates, of course, competing in this mayor's race. You got Zoran Mamdani, Democratic nominee, and a current state assemblyman. Considered a frontrunner in polling, his platform is largely focused on affordability, including rent freezes, free public transit, and higher taxes on the wealthy. Now, Andrew Cuomo, of course, the former governor of New York, who is also running in this race, is an independent candidate after being defeated by Mamdani in the Democratic primary. He got crushed, by the way. He emphasizes his extensive experiences in government. Then, of course, you have Curtis Sliwa, who is the Republican nominee and founder of the Guardian Angels, who previously ran for mayor in 2021. Now, currently, polls show Mamdani with a double-digit lead in the 3-way race. Now, there is a weird dynamic here that the race does tighten if Republican Curtis Sliwa is excluded, with Cuomo often closing the gap significantly, leading Cuomo to publicly urge Sliwa to drop out. Sliwa, however, has stated he will not do that. The candidates held their final televised debate, I think yesterday, or Wednesday rather, which was marked by bitter exchanges between Mamdani and Cuomo over issues like experience, integrity, and their stance on the Israel-Gaza conflict. Major points of contention, of course, in the final weeks include the city's affordability crisis, public safety, and the candidates' past records and controversial statements. Now, early voting, of course, set to begin this weekend on Saturday and will run through November 2nd. Again, I am obviously being a born New Yorker. I don't live there anymore, but I went back there recently. I said it back in August. I went back to New York. Home, I call that, of course. There was a lot of energy about the race, as was if you just listen to people talking behind the scenes and in restaurants and bagel shops everywhere and whatnot. You sit in cabs and taxis and watch the news on there. The energy about this race is palpable. It is palpable. So I think Mamdani will win. It will be the will of people. I am curious, though, if There will be a last minute decision by Sliwa and Cuomo to merge, because obviously Mamdani is looked at as the socialist or communist candidate, even though he's a democratic socialist. A lot of things there, a lot of things to unpack in this race, and I'm very intrigued by it. More so the fact that what kind of effect does this race have for future elections? Okay, right now on the federal level, of course, Democrats have no pressure, have no leverage whatsoever. They don't have the House, they don't have the Senate, they don't have the White House. Okay, now it is thought that they will probably get back the House based on the numbers and based on the states and representatives that are up for election or re-election, and based on their districts that lean a certain color, which is blue. Most likely they'll get control back of the House. Maybe, we'll see. But I am curious how this race will impact next year's midterms. Okay, midterms that people will say, and again, we hear this every freaking 4 years, but I think given the nature of where we are at politically right now and who's in office right now, this feels like the most important midterms of our lifetime. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's true. This is my feeling based on the rhetoric out there. And could that, depending on the results of the race here in New York, because remember, it is New York City, biggest city in the world. So eyeballs, again, as I said earlier in the podcast, the New York mayor, no matter who's in it, who's the mayor, Giuliani, de Blasio, doesn't matter. Ed Koch, always bigger, always is more well known than the governor of New York. Okay, because the city's that important, it's that big. Will the results here affect the midterms next year? And then will that midterms next year, if it does that, how would it affect any effect on the 2028 presidential election and everything in between? That's why it's important. That's why I'm intrigued by this. Look, I know politics can be is dirty, and it is messy, and people are very polarized by politics as a whole. But as politics, as show, for me personally, I don't give a shit about anybody disagreeing on this one. It is very intriguing to watch. It really is. So we will see. Obviously, we'll react to the race in the weeks to come on the show. But that will do for me on this podcast. Again, dated October 24th, 2025. I am on X at EJ Christian 7. Of course, Earnestly Podcast, of course, all podcast catchers. Check out the YouTube page, of course, at Earnestly Pod on YouTube. Of course, the TikTok at Earnestly Pod as well, too. I hope you guys enjoyed all the content we've had this week, and we'll have next week, and we have a lot. Dude, look, this is just, again, the show's labor love, but I love doing it for you guys, and I really, really, truly appreciate all your support. So until the next episode we record, have a good weekend, guys. Love you guys. Take care.